What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. Welcome back to another preview video. This is going to be for week 3 of the Autumn Internationals. What we do in these preview videos is, of course, we chuck on a game of rugby in the background so that you guys have something fun to watch. And over the top, we talk about the official teams announced by the teams, who we think is going to do well, who we think is going to do badly, an overall sort of view on the teams that have been mentioned. And then we finally give a score prediction for what we think will happen in the game. Scotland versus South Africa is promising to be a big one, so let's get this game kicked off and underway. Alrighty, Adam Hastings is going to get us kicked off. We'll start out to the left this time. Why do I say this time? Well, that's because I've already recorded this video and I didn't turn my microphone on. So I get to probably, for one of the first times ever since doing these preview videos, I get to do the whole game again. And hopefully try and do a little bit better than I did in the last one. So let's talk about Scotland versus South Africa. Scotland, as we're playing as them, we'll start off talking about them. Scotland had a good game against Australia last week. They definitely had luck on their side a little bit, I would say. I did call in the preview video last week that I thought Scotland were going to beat Australia. I thought they put out a stronger team than Australia, but they certainly worked hard for that win. There was a very, very tight game. It was much closer than I thought it was going to be, and Australia really came out the block, showing off what they wanted to bring into this Autumn Internationals. I think Scotland got a little bit lucky with some of the decisions. Australia had a missed penalty and also 2 tries disallowed because of their own discipline, elbowing on the floor, punching in the face, all that stuff going on. So they definitely dropped a lot of points there, and Scotland managed to take full advantage of it and come away with a win, not taking anything away from Scotland. They certainly played well, but Australia will be annoyed to have not come away with that game. Moving forward towards this game then, Scotland versus South Africa, going to bring a totally different host of challenges. South Africa we saw play very well against Wales, and Scotland will no doubt have been watching that game all of this week. So talking about the team that's been announced for this one, let's start off with the front row. Pierre Schumann or Schoeman, there was a bit of discrepancy even in the commentary team last week about how to pronounce the surname. I'll go with Schoeman for now. Schoeman, McInally and Xander Fagerson, who had a couple of issues, as we see a try about to go in here already against me. That's not great. Xander Fagerson, definitely a bit of pushing, bit of shoving, a couple of penalties against him. Just needs to sort out that discipline a little bit. However, Schoeman's been very, very impressive to me. Really enjoying him in the scrum. He's a big, big guy. Sort of come out of nowhere for me personally. But he's playing really good rugby at the minute, and against a team like South Africa who love their scrum, it's definitely going to be a big thing to have big players in that front row. As we move on to talk about the locks, one of the big things that's going to be going on in this game is obviously going to be a battle between set pieces. There's going to be scrum and lineup. So what we're going to do is we're going to rattle these off in one sort of big group here. So in the rest of the forwards, and let's say, so we've got Sam Skinner, Grant Gilchrist, Nick Haining, Richie Gray and Matt Fagerson. Now, one of the areas that I can already see Scotland developing here is they know how much of a threat that South Africa line-out is going to be. So there's a couple of ways to deal with the South African line-out. It's just generally be better than them, or you've got to try and overpower what they're going to bring in the line-out. Now, they've got some big boys in their lock department, so Scotland have obviously gone for the multiple jumpers angle. Sam Skinner and Grant Gilchrist, both very tall men, very big guys, and also very good in the line-out. To be fair, handling's normally pretty good in their line-outs, but they've also got Richie Gray in there, so they've moved on to a 3-jumper system that'll just be able to swarm the South Africa line-out, but also allow them to hopefully be able to win back more of their own line-out, so I don't think that's a bad move. We've also got Nick Haining in there, who is also a very good lifter, can play 6 or 8 whatever you need him to, so you could also bring Matt Fagerson in there, but that's probably why we've seen Hamish Watson move to the bench. But I don't think it's a terrible move, but it'd be nice to see Watson come on there. There's also a bit of versatility here. Not sure who Watson will come on for eventually. Maybe we'll see him come on for directly for Richie Gray, or we might see him come on at 7, Richie Gray move to 6, Nick Haining come off, or Nick Haining might move to 8, we might see Matt Fagerson go off. Could be a lot of switching in that back row, but as a set of 1 to 8, this is pretty good from Scotland. It looks strong. It looks like a team that's probably competent at being able to handle some of the pressures they're going to experience with South Africa. South Africa are also big in terms of that breakdown area. One of the big things that I'm interested to see is how they're going to cope now. No Hamish Watson, only Jamie Ritchie. We know how they like their double tacklers, double jacklers system going on there, so not having Hamish Watson starting this game could be interesting to see how they get on in terms of the breakdown. Looking back towards the half-back partnership, Ali Price and Finn Russell, this is a team that of course we saw if now a majority of Scotland games is the way they're going to be moving. Finn Russell's having great fun playing rugby at the minute. We saw him in that Australia game, some fantastic passes, some great little offloads, really getting into it. Ali Price certainly up there in terms of world-class scrum halves, but for me now, just making sure you get the awareness correct. There was certainly a couple of times in that game against against Australia, where there were 2-3 men overlaps and Ali Price was passing the wrong way. Don't know whether they need more guidance. Don't know whether they need a slightly louder centre maybe to be calling out. Maybe they need Stuart Hogg to move back towards like a secondary fly half position just in order to help direct Ali Price a bit of which way to pass to. Hopefully he'll be able to step up in this game. In terms of the centre partnership, Matt Scott coming in here alongside Chris Harris. Chris Harris's defensive work has just been going from leaps and bounds from what he used to be. Defensive work very, very good. We saw it again against that Australian team. He is just stopping everything that comes towards him. It's so nice to see from Chris Harris. Had a good tour with the Lions as well. Be interesting to see how he gets on in this game. There's certainly going to be a tough point of contention will be in that centre channel now. Both teams bringing in big centre partnerships here. Max Scott coming in here, which is nice to see in that inside centre channel because it shows the depth of choices that Scotland now have. There's got to be a good 6, 7, 8 maybe willing to start now in that centre channel for Scotland, so they're not short of numbers. Looking ahead towards that World Cup, they'll certainly want to get this team more sort of secure and niche down a little bit, and I think Matt Scott could be looking in here to try and have a good game if he can get away with it. And finally, looking at this back three, Duhan van der Merwe at 11, McLean going in on the right wing, and Stuart Hogg in that fullback and captaincy position. So there'll be some big calls here, mainly because a couple of these lads now gone on to play South Africa with the Lions, with the likes of Stuart Hogg and Duhan van der Merwe. They'll know what to expect from this Scotland team. Stuart Hogg will be needing to have a good game in this one. We know how much South Africa love their ball in the air, the high balls, and putting pressure on you, making you run backwards and just sort of cover the ball. One of the big issues here for me, Duhan van der Merwe, not brilliant under the high ball, and we certainly saw it used in those Lions tours. Kicking the ball high and towards, and people like Mapimpi, Nkosi, all these sort of lads, very, very good in the air and will put a lot of pressure on Duhan van der Merwe, so he might need more support going on that wing. Not too sure about McLean's ability in the air. Hopefully he can cope as well in this game. We've moved on to the second half, so we'll quickly talk about the Scotland replacements here. So, starting off in this front row, Ewan Ashman getting his try against Australia. That was really nice to see from him. It's nice to see some of the new lads getting on, getting some tries on the board. Jamie Batty and Ollie Kebble. To be honest, the replacements that came on against Australia, I thought played well. I thought they were able to deal with the scrum. A bit hard to just work out because, of course, Australia had so many issues with their own scrum, having to move loose heads to tight heads and what have you because of people going off. But I think it worked well. I think they managed to hold out and even managed to get a couple of penalties against a team like Australia in terms of that scrum. Scotland will have been very happy with that one. And then the rest of the forwards, Jamie Hodgson and Hamish Watson. So like I said before, where will Hamish Watson come on? Not really sure. It will either come on in that 6 or 7 shirt, and it'll be a bit of a mix-up to see how they move on. I would imagine it will probably see Richie coming off. He tends to not play the full 80. He tends to do sort of a 65, 70 minute. So you might see Hamish Watson come on for 7, or maybe we'll see Richie move to that 6 shirt and Nick Haining come off. I can just see Matt Ferguson playing the full game. And in terms of the replacements backs, George Horn, Adam Hastings and Blair Kinghorn. George Horn will hopefully get a bit more game time. Ali Price will just be seeing how he's working out. Ali Price normally quite good at the box kicks, but if South Africa are being better than him in terms of box kicking, probably time to get George Horn on. And in terms of coverage in this back three now, I think this is very useful because Adam Hastings can not only play fly half but also centre, but also he can play fullback if you really need him to. And Blair Kinghorn is more than capable of playing either wing and also at fullback, and Stuart Hogg is also happy playing fullback or fly half. So pretty much that back 10 to 15 now completely interchangeable. Really nice to see Scotland definitely getting a bit more of a utility team going on, I'd probably. So nice to see that. It'd be nice to see some of these lads go on. I imagine Adam Hastings will probably come on at 12 and Matt Scott at some point, but we'll have to see how they get on against a South Africa team that will be riding high. South Africa, of course, beating Wales last week in a very, very tight game. I thought it was going to be a bit more of a steamrolling for South Africa. Wales came in with a good plan, managing to shut down some of their set pieces, and if it wasn't for a man running on a field, who knows how that game could have turned out. But we won't digress too much in that. So South Africa now beginning to get this team more established. They're getting the wins under the belt, so they want to, and they'll be looking to reclaim that top spot because I believe New Zealand are now back at number 1. Not really sure. Believe they're still at number 1. I think it's very, very close. They're just swapping depending on what day of the week it is now. So looking at this South African team, this is a pretty standard now front row for them. It's nice to see Nia Carney back in. I did think he picked up an injury in that Wales game. So nice to see him back, and I do like Nia Carney. He's a terrifying man, but he's very good. As a front three, I think they'll be able to deal with this scrummaging pretty well. We know what they bring in terms of scrummaging, especially in that second half when the replacement front three come on and just begin to tear teams apart. Hopefully Scotland will be be able to deal with the pressure. In terms of their lock department, one switch here, Etzebeth and Mostert coming in. No Lou Diego now starting there. Lou Diego, I believe, can play lock or flanker if you really need him to. So they've obviously switched up their team. South Africa announced their team very early this week. It was back on Tuesday. So they've obviously just aware what their game plan is going to be. They've gone more lock-based now. They want to get those jumpers in, hopefully working pretty well for them. And then finally in those the back three here, Khaleesi as the captain, Quagga Smith and Dwayne Vermeulen. Now there's a couple of very, very good players in there. Khaleesi with that impressive tackle on Louis Rees-Zammit last week, stopping him from scoring a try. Very, very good work, showing why you're captain. Quagga Smith's playing really good rugby in terms of the tackle and turnover rates. The man just rips balls out of everywhere. Very, very good. And finally, Dwayne Vermeulen, who's really organised in this South African defence very, very well. You see him every game. Big call-outs, very, very sort of vocal player, wanted to call out. Wales targeted him a lot in that game just to try and shut him down, and they still couldn't get away with a win. It'll be interesting to see how Scotland can take out Dwayne Vermeulen. But as a 1-8, pretty solid, pretty standard. It's really mean to probably say that it's a standard team because they are so good now, this South African front eight, but they know they're going to do the job that they're expected to do. In terms of the halfback partnership, the Yantees boys coming in, Herschel and Elton Yantee is going to be working well together. Personally prefer Andre Pollard at 10. I think he brings a very different skill set. I think Elton Yantees is a much more sit back and let other people play. A lot more kicking from him from hand and trying to get the ball over and just sort of letting other people take charge. Whereas I think Andre Pollard is much more of a distributor, puts himself in the game and then actually offloads it to people in order for them to make an impact. So maybe in that second half is when we'll really see the South Africa team come alive, but hopefully Elton Yantees can hold up for a good chunk of the game. In terms of the centre partnership, we already said this is going to be a big contest area now. Dearlende and Am playing very good rugby together. They've had a lot of experience now playing together. They know what to do. They'll get in and play some pretty good rugby. And finally, the back three, Mapimpi, Jesse Creel, and this week we have LaRue. I believe, was it Valemsa starting last week? LaRue, personally, a bit hit or miss for me, depending on how the game goes. I think he's probably technically better under a high ball. It'll be interesting to see if Scotland can utilise some of their kicking in this game. We got to see in that Australia game how much they were trying to go for those 50-22s and get some of the balls over. So LaRue's going to have a lot of ground to cover now, along with Jesse Creel. It will be interesting to see how they manage to cope with that, because to me, LaRue not necessarily the best all the time at covering that back field. But as a 1-15, looking pretty solid. Not a lot of big chinks in this. I think personally for me the only change would be at 10, and maybe you'd want, I guess LaRue's pretty fine at fly half. We are coming towards the end of the game, so we'll quickly look at the South African replacements. Malcolm Mark, Stephen Kiptoff and Vincent Koch. Of course, they know what they do now. They come on in that second half, that 45-50 minutes, and just start butchering people up in terms of that scrummaging area. Lou Diego and Jasper Weiss, who's not something I know a great deal about Jasper Weiss, but Lou Diego, of course, comes on. He's a very, very talented player. Believe he can play lock or flanker. Someone can correct me on that if not, but I do see him playing very good rugby. Cobus Reinach, they're not really missing Faf de Klerk anymore, are they? What happened there? Cobus Reinach, very, very good with the ball in hand. Andre Pollard and Frans Dane, the man who can't be kept down, and to be fair, was playing a really good game against Wales, just bulldozing people over. Really nice to see from him. But as a whole team, overall, this South Africa team looking very good, which will bring us on to the score prediction. And for me, although they're both putting out good teams, I think I'm leaning towards South Africa for this game. I think the scrummaging and line-out situation may be able to hold out for that 40-50 minutes, but I think as soon as South Africa begin to take over that department, Scotland will struggle. Scotland are a much more reactionary team. Wales tend to come in with a sort of game plan and have a sort of ABC. I feel like Scotland come in with an A and just hope it works better for them. So for me, I'm going to call a South Africa win. I think a lot of people might think it might be below 5. I'm going to go a little bit higher than that. I'm going to say South Africa to win by 14 is going to be my call. But of course, guys, I am but one man on the internet talking nonsense about rugby. So make sure you drop down in the comments your thoughts on the game and what you think will be the score prediction for the game. Of course, we will be doing one of these videos for every game going on in week 3, so make sure you subscribe to the channel just to keep up to date with all the latest videos as they come out. And if you've enjoyed this one, make sure to drop it a like, because it does really help the channel out. But I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.